Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something I think every educator and probably every student has felt at some point. It's what we're calling the grade paradox.
It's that classic scenario, right? It just breaks every traditional model of assessment.
Totally.
You've got two students, both of them score a 7 out of 10 on a math test. And our system looks at that and says, great, they're the same, they're average, they can move on.
But if you actually talk to their teacher, you get a completely different story.
Yeah.
They are fundamentally different.
Absolutely.
You have student A who, aced all the homework, followed every single rule to the letter, but then completely froze on the one abstract problem on the test.
And then there's student B, made some sloppy calculation errors, sure, but when they got to that abstract problem,
They saw a connection to something from a history class and just solved it brilliantly.
and that contrast, that one little example, it shows the massive limitation of our current system.
Yeah.
It's all based on behavioral metrics.
Score.
The score, the checklist, the grade, it gives us a snapshot of what a student reproduced in that moment, but it tells us absolutely nothing about the underlying architecture of how they think.
We're measuring the shadow, not the object casting it.
Exactly, we're not seeing the structure.
Okay, so let's get into this. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore a pretty revolutionary framework. It's called the phenomenal manifold hypothesis.
We can call it psi for short.
Right, psi. And the idea is we're literally moving from grades to geometry to understand how the mind organizes knowledge. We stop measuring content and we start mapping the structure.
Precisely. The phenomenal manifold, or psi, is basically a geometric structure. Think of it like a mathematical map of your conscious experience.
A map of the mind.
And what's so powerful is that the actual geometry of this mental space, its curvature, its dimensions, how connected it is, it describes everything all at once. The subjective feeling, the behavior you see, and even the neural dynamics in the brain.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge shift. Because right now, education still leans on these vague concepts. Learning styles, for example.
Or just applying the same intervention to every kid in the 9th grade just because they're in the 9th grade.
It feels like trying to fix a Swiss watch just by looking at what time it shows.
I'd say it's worse. It's like using the same wrench for every single bolt, no matter the size. What geometric pedagogy does is it replaces that snapshot with a structural map. We are mapping the actual architecture of the experience.
So what does the knowledge look like in their head? What does it shape?
That's the question.
So if we're throwing out the ABC report card, what are the new metrics? What are these geometric invariants, I think you call them?
Right, the geometric invariants. There are 3 core ones that replace the simple score.
Okay, let's take them one by one. What's the first?
The first is dimension. We call it delta. This basically quantifies how rich the conceptual space is.
Richness, meaning?
In plain English, it's how many different connections a student can make to a single piece of information.
So a concept with high dimension has a lot of conceptual neighbors. It's not isolated.
A student who connects the idea of force in physics to, say, social force in history or narrative force in a book, that student has a high-dimensional space. Their knowledge is highly differentiated.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. What's next?
Next is curvature. This is related to a metric called gamma, and it measures cognitive flexibility versus rigidity.
Okay, curvature is where my brain starts to hurt a little.
Let's use an analogy. Think of a road.
A road. I could do that.
Low curvature is like a perfectly straight, flat highway. It's super efficient, fast, predictable. Student A, our rule follower, lives on this highway.
Okay, efficient,
But there are no off-ramps. If the problem requires a detour, they're stuck. They crash.
So low curvature is high rigidity. It gets you there fast, but only if the destination never, ever changes.
Correct. And high curvature is the opposite. It's a winding mountain trail. It's less efficient, maybe a bit slower, but it lets you connect distant points and pivot around obstacles.
That's where creativity and insight happen.
That's where it happens. It's flexible thinking.
Perfect, I get it.
Yeah.
Rigidity is flat. Flexibility is curvy. What's the last one? What holds it all together?
That would be integration, or I. And this is crucial for stability. It tells you how well all those different concepts are actually connected. Is the knowledge a coherent structure, or is it just a bunch of brilliant but fragmented ideas floating around?
So the goal of assessment just completely changes. We're not measuring a snapshot of what you remember anymore.
No.
We're mapping the trajectories of learning. We're charting the journey.
And that brings us right back to our mystery, the tale of the 2 sevens.
Right. Student A and student B both get a 710. The current system fails them. How does this geometric model fix that?
It fixes it because it reveals two completely different structural profiles that need opposite kinds of help.
Let's start with student A, the one who knows the algorithms by heart, the hyper-efficient worker who crumbles under ambiguity.
Structurally, student A has a narrow conceptual space.
Hmm.
That's low dimension, low delta. They have high coherence, but critically very low curvature.
The straight highway.
The straight highway.
Yeah.
Their thinking is rigid, mechanical. They can reproduce content perfectly, but they just cannot see the relationships outside the textbook.
So if that student asks for help, a teacher today might look at their score and say, well, you just need more practice problems, more drills, more structure.
Which would be the worst possible thing for them. You'd just be reinforcing the very rigidity that's holding them back. You're just making their highway longer and straighter.
So what do they actually need?
They don't need more structure. They need flexibility. They need exploration, open-ended problems, questions that force them to get off the highway and navigate those winding, high-curvature paths.
That's so counterintuitive for a teacher focused on standardized test prep. You're telling them to encourage, what, conceptual wandering?
We need to introduce a little bit of healthy conceptual turbulence.
Yes. Okay, so now student B. This is the student who sees the big picture, the forest, but constantly trips on the roots, makes silly mistakes.
Student B has the opposite profile. A really wide conceptual space, so high dimension, and high curvature. They're very flexible thinkers, but they have low integration.
Ah, so it's all disconnected.
Exactly. Their mind is like a brilliant library where all the books are amazing, but none of them are on the right shelf. It's rich, but it's chaotic.
So the intervention they need is not more creativity.
No. The last thing they need is another open-ended question. They need structure. They need help with synthesis, with making conceptual maps, with routines that help stabilize and integrate that vast, chaotic space into something they can actually use.
This is huge. So what here is that the current system doesn't just fail to help, it can actively do harm by misdiagnosing.
It gives the structure to the kid who needs flexibility, and it gives the flexibility to the kid who needs structure.
So this model gives a scientific basis for personalizing education based on a student's actual structural need, not just their test score.
And that reframe lets us think differently about learning difficulties, too.
Let's go there. How does this model change how we see something like ADHD? We usually think of it as a deficit or a lack of attention.
We shift the whole narrative away from deficit and towards atypical geometric organization. And that's not just semantics, it's a critical shift because it removes stigma and it points toward a real structural intervention.
So ADHD isn't a lack of attention.
Not really. From a geometric perspective, what we see in ADHD is an instability of trajectories in that mental space. The student has very high differentiation, they notice everything, but very low temporal integration.
So they can generate 1,000 different paths, but they can't stick to any single one for long.
Precisely. Which looks like a lack of attention from the outside. But the focus isn't missing, it's just shifting incredibly rapidly across this super rich, high-dimensional space.
So the intervention changes from just trying to suppress that behavior
Often with medication that just flattens the whole space.
to providing external anchors.
Yes. The focus becomes geometric stabilization. Things like reliable routines, clear external structures, strong conceptual frameworks that help them navigate their own flexible mind.
What about something like dyslexia? Is that also not a deficit?
The model suggests it's an atypical organization of the specific space that maps sounds to letters. The phone grapheme space. The information is there, it's just organized differently, making that linear mapping tough.
So the intervention isn't just more drills.
It's conceptual remapping. It's helping to reorganize that specific part of their mental map. It's far more precise.
It really does change the core question for a teacher, doesn't it? It goes from, what's the best way to teach this subject?
To something much more powerful.
What specific geometric transformation does this particular student's mind need right now?
That is the heart of geometric pedagogy.
Okay, but this brings up a concern. Whenever we try to connect the brain to the classroom, we run the risk of neuromyths.
Oh, absolutely. The left brain, right brain thing.
Exactly. Or that we only use 10% of our brain myth. There's this huge gap between hard neuroscience and what's actually useful for a teacher. How does this framework avoid that?
This is probably the most important part of the whole theory. It avoids it by providing a crucial intermediate layer.
An intermediate layer.
Yeah. See, the neuromyths happen when we try to jump directly from the physical brain to the behavioral outcome of learning. That leap is just too big. There's no common language.
So what's in the middle?
The informational invariants
Oh.
are geometric metrics. Integration, curvature, and differentiation. That's the middle layer.
I see. So the new path is.
It's brain activity, which leads to measurable informational invariance, the geometry, which then shapes the geometric experience, which finally results in a learning outcome.
That middle layer is like a translator. It connects what we can see in the brain, like, say, neural activity.
To the subjective structure of learning. And that means we can finally have real evidence-based neuroeducation. A teacher can try an intervention, let's say they teach synthesis skills, and then they can actually test if that changed the measurable geometric invariance.
So if you teach for integration, the integration metric has to go up.
It has to. And if it doesn't, the intervention failed at a structural level, even if the student managed to pass the test that one time.
Let's push this even further. What about those peak states of learning? What about flow? That feeling of being completely immersed.
Flow is just a specific optimal geometric configuration. It's a highly navigable space.
Meaning it.
Means you have high integration, high coherence, but also perfectly optimized differentiation. The challenge of the task perfectly matches your ability to navigate the conceptual space. There's no friction.
It's not just about.
Exactly. It's the ability to flexibly connect ideas that seem really far apart. And if you force a student onto that low curvature highway all the time, you are actively killing their capacity for creativity.
The impact here is just, it's staggering. This framework gives teachers a precise structural language for the mind. It could make personalized learning a real science, not just a buzzword.
Without dehumanizing the student, it's about their unique mental architecture.
We started with that mystery of the two sevens, and this geometric pedagogy offers a real answer, with tools to measure the architecture of learning: dimension, curvature, and integration.
And, this kind of structural realism goes way beyond the classroom. The research here suggests this exact framework could give us, operational criteria for assessing consciousness
Wait, consciousness in what?
in artificial systems.
You mean AI?
Yes. If we can calculate these same geometric invariants, I, gamma, delta from an AI's internal dynamics, and if those numbers hit a threshold comparable to a conscious human,
We'd have a structural test for potential consciousness.
it would raise some profound ethical questions, wouldn't it? About AI safety, about how we treat these systems. It suggests there's a fundamental geometry to consciousness, whether it's biological or artificial.
That is a genuinely stunning thought to end on. We're moving towards a world where the very architecture of a mind can be mapped.
So the question for you to think about is, what shape does your own conceptual space have right now? Is it a rigid highway, or is it a rich, winding mountain trail?
We'll see you next time for The Deep Dive.